Sawadee Hello everyone. My name is Itipat Limanirak. I'm the moderator. So I'm delighted to welcome everyone to our webinar today, Framing of Winning Data Monetization Strategies and Navigating the Challenges. So monetization strategies or data monetization is less about the technology conversation, but it's more about the process of increasing economic value of the data that start with thoughtfully understanding of the business initiative from organization or what organization would like to achieve or try to achieve from the data. So today objective, we would like to provide an approach that not hang up with technology itself, but rather than driving economic value from business strategies and collection of the use cases from front office, middle office, and back office. And today we have the fantastic key speaker that have from the different domain expert. Myself, Itipat from KPMG Thailand, data and analytic teams. And we have the Matt Crane, deal advisory partner and champion in the value creation strategy. And I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Kong Gitingam. I'm sorry, apologies about that. Co-founder and CEO of the C-Trust OCR technology with the generative AI, and also the expert in open data. So before we proceed on into the next session, I would like to welcome and encourage our audience to actively participate in our webinar. If you have any question during the discussion, please feel free to drop your message into the chat box, and our staff will help to collect those questions. And then we come to at the Q&A, we're going to bring those questions and answers. So let's jump in the first section. Each organization currently maximize the value from the data that it holds. So I'd like to start with Matt, as you have a lot of experience in the deal strategies. So can you please share your perspective on the data monetization, how your client can leverage the data in terms of the deal advisory, either buy side or sell side?
Sure, thanks, Itipat, and good morning, everyone. So yeah, there's a lot of buzzwords around at the moment around data, value creation, big data analytics, all of those kind of things. And as you said, Itipat, I'm from a deal advisory background, so I work in operational improvement in M&A, so buy side, sell side, but also in turnaround, restructuring. So in that world, value is really critical. So the way we look at value creation in that regard is to use data to identify potential upside, whether that's increasing revenue, reducing costs, or increasing cash flow, because that's going to help create value for the company and ultimately a higher valuation for the shareholders and the buyers or the sellers. So that's the way we look at it. And the way we approach it, as illustrated on this slide, is a few different steps. So firstly, we gather all of the company data. And we're going to talk about this later, the challenges around company data. But we gather all of that data, and then we gather some external data. So maybe that's benchmarks or geospatial data or market data, whatever it might be. And then we bring all that together to give ourselves a single source of truth or a baseline of what are we currently dealing with here from a company perspective and the market perspective. And obviously that varies sector to sector as well. And then we have a list of hypotheses or use cases, as we also call them. Where do we think there is opportunity for this particular company to generate value? And we compare all of that data, all of those use cases, and then we will analyze each of those use cases, hypotheses, to see is there some value in there. And then that gives us a list of opportunities for that business to grow and create value. And as you'll see here on the slide, we have 4 areas here that examples of what we look at. So one might be growth. Can we enter a new market? Can we capture new customers? One might be experience. This is a big topic right now, customer experience. How can you use data to give a better experience? Then either you capture more customers or you can charge a higher premium price. Costs also, reducing costs, digitalization, saving operational costs is another area. And then digital. Maybe there's an opportunity for digital transformation that the data can point us towards. So yeah, that's the way we look at it. And yeah, that value, that revenue, that cost, that cash flow, that's really critical for me.
Thanks, Matt. I think you mentioned quite interesting about how to break down through the big problem in order to identify where its opportunity is, and using the use case as the unit of analysis, right? So let me shift to Dr. Kong, can I call you shortly? As you have hands-on experience and the wide knowledge of the open data from your previous work, my understanding, or DGA, right? So would you mind please to share about how you see the data monetization in context of open data, and maybe the real world example that you see that can monetize data and get the benefit from the private and public sectors?
Actually, now I'm running my own startup, but actually previously I used to be a director of innovation from digital government agency, and I try to drive the open data. So we set up many open data events during that time, trying to open the data to the public. The questions of the reason that why we open the data, probably from the government side of it, would be a little bit different from the private sector. For the private sector, imagine that I think every company, maybe you have accounting system or ERP, enterprise resource planning system, or MRP, material resource planning system. We have to ask, apart from using it for our convenience, actually we need a centralized and share the data, right? Because that data is a single source of truth for you to see it, react it, and work on it. So for the government, probably the goals will be a little bit different. Because for the private sector, we know that we try to drive the strategy, we try to minimize costs, maximize profit, and then making our cash flow smooth, this kind of thing that we focusing. But the goal for the government are a little bit different, because if you open the open data handbooks everywhere in the world, that government said, the target principles, there are 4 principles. First, for transparency. Second, accountability. The third, participation. And fourth is technology and innovation. For the transparency itself, it's about the government to show to the public. That's why we open it, and how they manage this. And participation is how do you allow people to use the data to create some profit for the government side, which is economic impact and social impact. So when we talk about the open data, there are some principles that we have to work. And many people think about data and it's just open it, but actually not. Because government has too many data. Right. So we have to make sure that which data is high value. So there are many organizations try to say, okay, this is a highlighted data, that any government open it will create your economic impacts or corruption index, this kind of thing. So people have to focus on that. So when we did at DGA, we also focus on these kind of things to make sure that we're going to have a data which is make us competitive to the world. And we have to make sure that the data is complete and primarily from the source, timely, at the right time. Not like we open data of 10 years ago. It doesn't help much. All right. Accessible, machine processable. That means, okay, in Thailand we have many data that is accessible because there's most of them in paper, in image. It's not machine readable and processable. And some people may need to like sign NDA, log in. This doesn't comply with discriminatory, proprietary, and license free. So this kind of the data, we have to think about it. When we see the value of the data, we have public data, the more value, the more privacy attaching. Like the highest value is business data and personal data, which government cannot give out. But government can give statistic, but with thinking and awareness. So if we design of this data pipeline clearly, we also can help to create this impact. From the use case outside of Thailand, I think many people know ways where is sharing social data on the public traffic status. So we use crowdsource, and then we can create a traffic status together. Or New York City, they use average neighbor incomes, age of building, and electrical issues to predict fire. Which building is going to fire, and it's 70% accurate. So that's why you can predict this week that which building is going to get on fire.
Right.
But the point is, what is the value? Right. I can say this building is going to fire. So the value is like just Matt said. You need someone to touch the data and say what would be great for them. For example, insurers or the building itself can get feedback. Okay, if I'm this risk, I'm going to de-risk this. How will we do that? That service is going to create another business to do this. So, or climate change from the Monsanto. And in Thailand, we have 2 startups. That is, I'm proud to tell that they are using the open data. First is Viabus. Viabus, they try to allow the bus driver all over Bangkok to share and correct their own movement. And then they use this data to create an app that you can check the status and route of moving. Now they move to the boat. So they expand from bus to boat now. Right. For the iTax, they link with the revenue department already. So you can planning your personal income tax with this app. And you can submit to revenue department via this app as well. And this one, they can generate money by advertising or selling those kind of like insurance or wealth or products. So you can do like tax deduction planning here. So this is roughly of the how open data come and create value, and they can get paid for this value. So it's not about open only, but you have to create some people to touch it and make the data get a higher value, adding it up. Innovation and ideas is the key.
Thank you very much, Kapom. I think it's a very touch on about the real world example with use of the open data. And I'd like to flip or to talk about that we see the value of the data from external sources, right? And we come to the internal organization. When you talk about the economics or impact of the data, and if we would like to talk or play in the data monetization games, we need to understand the rules. So I'd like to bring the 3 key rules that's very important for organization to understand this. Rule number 1 is about the role and the value of data in your business. We talk about the value, right? But in context of this monetization, we talk about the value in use, right? Not about the accounting concept. Why? I give example. If you buy the purchasing about the luxury SUV car, right, 2.6 million baht, and you drive over 3 years, right? And you ask about accounting, how you can measure the value of this asset. Depreciation cost, you end up probably can sell this car with the 1 million baht. But if you turn the value in aspect of economics, right? I'm going to use this car to do the Grab services. I might generate revenue about 100,000 baht per month. End up 3 years, I can turn to be the value about the 3.6 million baht. So if we consider this concept carefully and thoughtfully about the data asset, you do not use it. You do not get any value, right? So that's why that Dr. Kong mentioned and Matt mentioned about how we can utilize and monetize data to link with the initiative and business. That is a key, right? And then you can create a new value of sources that we give example already. Come to rule number 2 that I like to talk about. Embedded data monetization into the business strategy. Because organization, why you exist, you have the purpose, you have the goal, right? And you need to understand that business strategy that you like to drive and to achieve. And then you incorporate monetization from data into it. I give example, this one is a goal statement in the insurance health industry, for example. In response to increase or 2-digit of the claim ratio, the objective is to optimize the claim containment. We target to reduction of the 10 to 25% in the claim payouts, right? If we look to this goal statement, right, that organization try to drive, and then look at the key stakeholder underlying this, what they can do about it with the data. In the claim operations, right, they would like to see about unnecessary claim, right? And the use case that possible it could be, how can we detect about the fraud, waste, and abuse in the claim that unnecessary to pay, right? You might end up with the potential value 8 to 12%, right? But underlying this, you need the data from claims, from the policy, example in insurance, right? But leverage this data set, you connect with another stakeholder, right? Where is the claim cost coming from? Oh, it comes from the service provider, right? That's a hospital. What should be the use case for this one? Oh, we can have the performance analytics to see which is the network that mostly generate this cost, and what we can do about it to optimize, right? And do something about the partnership agreement or classification of those networks. Maybe we end up with another 5 to 10%. With a similar analogy, go to the value chain, right? You leverage the data domain more from the claim operation, from the policy, come to the customer. We like to improve the customer experience. How we can make the faster claim, right? And digital enablement, right? That is another 2 to 5%. And then come to the what's a product. In this context, we might need to do the better risk selection and then come up with a new pricing model to respond to the personalized life and lifestyle. So collectively of the potential value, this is a good example of leverage the data asset to create more values. And come to the rule number 3, communication. This data value to organizations to understand this one. I'm sure that many organizations say, we do already data project. And maybe they do the similar things with the same data asset and duplication. Why not you do together? That's a key of the economic term, right? I borrowed the term from the data research paper about economic value, and then we talk about the power of more is more. That's why the collection of the use case, you're going to have the marginal cost reductions because the same data asset can leverage to another set of use cases, and then the effect of economic value growing because you leverage those data assets. And of course, in the world of the data analytics like AI, if your use case underlying with the model, when you train the model to uplift the model, it's going to be accelerate the value of the data. And data alone itself, it doesn't make meaningful until you link with the business strategy. I think it's a key. I think we can move to the next in terms of, if it's so good, what is challenges that why people not so easy to monetize the data, right? So this is a kind of big picture that we see the most or many companies struggling with monetize the data, starting from the complexity, legacy of the company, right? In particular on the legacy company that have the many system or no centralized or decentralized the way to operate this data until the structure of the how we can bring and select the data that carefully in the world that we have the data privacy at the moment. It's very important that when you go to dig down in the data layer, how you should manage this and still comply with the regulations. And of course, a process in organization that who should own this thing, right? That's kind of, I think, the challenges. Maybe I start with Matt first, from your experience.
Sure.
What you see your client about the challenges.
Yeah, sure. And I think, as you said, right, if it was so easy, why is everyone not doing this, right? And there are a number of challenges that we see in our clients. Maybe I can talk about 3. So the first one is often clients don't have the data. So maybe they want to do the analysis or they know that there's some value, but they don't capture it. And that could be from a technology issue or a legacy issue. We've never captured that data. Or maybe it's an external data source, but they haven't gone and bought that source or captured that data source. So that's a key issue. And then linked to that, even sometimes with our clients, they have the data, but actually they don't know they have it. So often we go to them and say, oh, can you give us this data? We can do some interesting analysis. And maybe the CFO says, oh, no, we don't have that. And then we speak to the IT guy, and he's like, yeah, here it is. We have it. And there's a bit like the connection you were saying earlier, there's no kind of overarching data strategy. So that often happens. The second point, as I said earlier, is the value lens. People or our clients, they don't often think about value and data. They think about data and, let's do loads of analytics, but they're not linking it to how is that going to increase my revenue? How is that going to reduce my costs, increase my profitability, or my cash flow? So there's no value lens there. And then the third point I would say is sometimes we see clients get very, very focused on the data has to be 100% accurate. And if there's one small mistake in the data, then we can't use it and we can't make any decisions. But I have a strong view on that, and as I said, I work in a deal environment. We have to work very quickly. We have to make decisions. So sometimes you have to accept that 80% accurate is okay, as long as it gives you enough information to make a decision. Now, sometimes you do need 95, 100%, but a lot of times, actually 80, 85% is good enough, and it gives you enough to make a decision about your business. But many times I see clients, they analyze and analyze and analyze, trying to get that accuracy up, and then they're not making any decisions, so they're not creating any value. Right. So yeah, those are some of the issues, challenges I see in our clients.
Thanks, Matt. I think you touched on a very common pitfall, right, from the understand about the value and integrate the value of the data into the business problem that to solve, and also talk about the way to monetize and overcome perfections, right? What should be the right approach, right? For example, let me switch to Dr. Kong,นะครับ, in context of the open data. I'm sure that a lot of challenges as well, right? Would you mind to please share about what you see and navigate challenges in context of open data?
Okay, actually, I think I try to follow after Matt just mentioned. Let's think about what the data is. We always think that data is a thing that we think that it's a thing that we need to get it perfect. Probably the data itself is not real, and you cannot trust that data. Because when you feel like, oh, today weather is so hot, right? And how you know that how much is hot? You just use thermometer, right? You may have 10 thermometers, measures with different number, different figures, right? 44 degrees, 43 degrees, 41 degrees, 40 degrees. Which one you should trust? So the data itself is just a part of measuring and capture the nature. It's a way you capture the nature and come to display. So once you want to make the temperatures cooling down, you have to find, okay, I try to put the air condition, put an ice. How do you make sure that it's slowing down? So you use temperature to measure. So data itself is not the real things. That's why you have to separate the way you think about the value and the thing that you need to manage and the data itself first. So that's why just Matt mentioned, if you said, I need everything to complete 100%, probably the thing that you fill in, maybe it's not real. Because the way to capture, you doesn't get it. But you have to make sure that you get the data to get roughly idea how you make a decision, not exactly rules to make it. So sometimes you have to give this kind of thing to every people to understand. So that's why when you come back to the data itself and data capturing that we are mentioning, the thing is about implementation IT system. If it's about implementation of IT system, it's come back to the rules of we call socio-technical. There are two approach. First, technical approach, which is now very easy. Technology is very good. But behavioral approach, because to capture the data, you need a lot of stakeholders who are willing to work on their workflow for you can capture the data. But most of the time, the value of the data created for one person, top management. I need dashboard. And once you need a dashboard, you say, fast, when you're going to finish your implementation, I want to see it. So you ask everyone to get your data without knowing that. Is it impeding their operation, daily operation? So come back to the basic of the data capturing. You need allow transaction processing run smoothly first and put the sensor. Capturing process and just you get real data, you need to do the dashboard and that's it. You don't need to, I want dashboard, come to get to me. So with that one, it's going to flip the way. That's why it's create burdens to the workers. For example, during the COVID times, I did a voluntary on the data. Everyone wants to know how many people get infected yesterday, right? To do so, you have to ask everyone to do that. Without technical or digital workflow, everyone do it on the paper. That's why during the Saturday and Sunday, we have people infected less than working day. You know why? Because government officer does work on Saturday and Sunday. So this kind of problem that with this one you cannot get good data. So that's why you have to work on with stakeholder first.
Right.
And make sure that you are going to work for the same goal that we are going with this data,
Right.
and you will get value with this data together. I think this.
Right.
For example, for the government, we focus on transparency. We need transparency. I ask you, do you think everyone in the country wants transparency? You said, yeah,
Depend-
right.
depend.
Yeah, as people, we need transparency. Really? Really? That you need transparency. Right. But if we change the way, we're not talking about the transparency. How about trust? As a people, as a government, we need to go together. I cannot resign. Probably someone can resign from to being Thai citizen.
Right.
But maybe it's not easy, right? The government also cannot, like, okay, I don't want to be your government. You can. So we have to stay together and climb the mountain together. If we talk like this, we need trust. And if transparency can create trust, how we measure that? I think that part is a challenge. But when we cannot align the value together, it's going to be a problem like this. I don't want to open for you. I don't want to see some broken data. I don't want to see incompleteness. Is it my fault if people always try to see put some penalties to someone who makes some mistake?
Right.
We don't live together. So no one wants to open
Yeah.
their own back that is got a lot of mistake, right? And another second part, the first part is, I think, the trust between each other on the data, the same goal. The second part is standard of data. Everyone has the data, but how do you know that they call the same things?
Right.
And how do you, when you share, you can align this kind of thing. And the last one is, you need to do like the manage of the workflow. So you see, start from people, and then we come from the standard, and then technologies just come later. So just don't go to the technology first.
Thank you. I think it's a very, very comprehensive view that also is very real in terms of the corporate world as well. I capture the keywords like a trusted data, right? That's a very important that people talk about the trusted data. And also the measuring the data, right? If you cannot measure it, right, in a meaningful way, that's important. And also sharing the data, right? That is a way to foster innovation, right? So, and also the challenge in terms of the operationalize the data, right? So I like to probably supplement to Dr. Kong in context of the business and organization context when you need to overcome the data monetization strategies. Let's start with the number one, organizational ownership. As we mentioned about, it needs to have the business strategy. No surprise, right? All the C-level that have the underneath with the strategy that they own to drive the business according to their focus area, it needs to buy in. They call the leadership buy-in is so important. And if you do it in the context of the enterprise value why, you need someone to play the role to help collect this problem and then help to solve with the data. That's why nowadays we see another role called the chief data officer. Some they call the head of data analytics, or something that head with the data title come into the organization to play this role, because that's the role they can make effective way to connect all the dots that require the data to the use case format, for example. And it's so important to play and interplay with the chief technology officer. But what I also observe are the effective responsibility to do this. Chief data officer, if it's nearby, connect with the business side rather than with the technology side. It makes more, because again, it comes back to about the strategy and business problem, right? That's the number one. So number two, about the start with, as Dr. Kong mentioned, not technology first. I heard company mention, oh, I want to do the data mesh strategy. We want to use the data bricks, or we need to have the single data platform. That should come later, right? First, talk about what's the problem statement. That's why the use case is a good representative of analysis form that you can allow everyone can speak out about their problem, right? But this in the constructive way that you can collect and identify that where is the data monetization can help, right? And come to about communication challenges. This exercise I give example. Stakeholder from business, they come to say to the team that do the data things about, okay, I want the machine learning model with this classification, with this prediction analytic, with this data set, plus the data filtering about X, Y, Z. In the real world, no. No one comes to say that, right? In the real world, they say, I have a problem. My customer leaving us. I have the drop sale. What happened? What should I do about it? So the data team or the person who in charge about it, it needs to have the communication skill, able to deep dive or unpack this statement in the way that can identify what is the data source that can achieve or solve the problem, right? For example, during the last 6 months, what happened in your product that you say that it had the turning down? Where the sort of data that you would normally look at? Oh, this reporting. And you start navigate whether you can see the data and requirements, right, to help you come up with later, or what should be the data products that can help you to speed up the process. Another thing that I'm sure in organization, if you look at the reporting in organization or dashboard that mentioned before, who use it? How many times they use those data dashboards? Sometimes some dashboard, no one uses it. And another loss of asset. So that's why the communication until the way that you're able to analyze about how to measuring the use of data is so important. Because that's the way that you can have the human loop back into that, where is really you use the data or not, right? And help bring the data to the part of the culture that use data to inform decision. And that's why the number 4, centralized or decentralized, right? I think today we have heard the concept about the data domain and the ownership, right? Why? Because the data domain, the ownership, let's say customer domain, right, is the person who have close to the customer. They have the better way to analyze and see things about what customer need. Accessing the data, and I have the better decision with the speed. It's similar to finance, that close to the finance domain, right? But the key thing is about both data domain have the something in between that to leverage. So decentralized, it helps to democratize the data to everyone in the organization. In that way, you empower people to collaborate and would like to do the project that do data monetization, right? And come to the last one that Matt mentioned about don't wait for perfect. So iterate always, right? If you wait for perfect, you don't get the use case done in terms of the speed, time to value, and de-risk the implementation. I think that's kind of the key common in context of the business organization. Let's come to the third section that I think maybe I start this one first, about how to execute the data monetization strategy. This is a 4-step. It's kind of recap thing that we are talking about in more structured ways. First, we understand the fundamental of the improved focus, right? What's the key agenda? Because the business organization have a different state of maturity of the data and also business agenda in terms of their own business. And then based on those, you collect the problem statement or goal statement, right? You look at and navigate about the data asset to see with the strategic data asset that you have, right, in organization. And then you need to define the value that you can create from those assets. That's so important, right? Otherwise, you cannot measure it. How can you say that it's already linked with the business strategy, right? And then which collective exercise, you're going to have the opportunity of monetization strategy. And it's important that have the feedback loop, right? Because data asset is evolving, it's not fixed. So you need to have the way to monitor and see that anything go wrong and then improve it all the time. Let's see in the practice, what's a case study that we have been experiencing. The client challenges are lack of the data strategy and alignment. I think the key is about the alignment that I mentioned before, right? How we can make the possibility that everyone can get benefit from this data asset, right? 2 data worlds. As I say, organizations have the history reason why they need to have duplicate Excel, talk the same thing but different department, and always need to get in sync before you give the right answer. That already takes time. Limited business benefit, obviously, if there is no single source of truth, when you would like to do something in more advanced, in the world today, I think customer-centric, right? People really less tolerant to waiting for something long. So instant, immediate, at the right moment is so important. With this, it comes to the architecture that you don't have enough, that it less opportunity for you to make benefit of the data. And come to about the architecture that have like more like a point-in-point integration. That is more like a tech side, that it needs to revamp or find another way that to able to make it faster and efficiencies. So what we help the client, first, do the discovery of use case, right? Talk with the business function across from front office until the back office, right? To see what the problem statement collectively. And then mapping this with the journeys. Why I'm saying this? Because customer-centric organization, they talk about customer journey interaction. And the value to add to the customer is not only the customer function team, until the customer service back office team as well, right? So if you're able to use the event approach to see where should be the data services that can be help them to do the better job to serve the customer, that is important, right? Define the journey, event data design, the driven design, and then what is the target operating model? To interaction between key business stakeholder and the tech team, right? Starting from initiation of the projects, transform this requirement into the text requirement, the data requirement, right? And then if we go further with the model development, and at the end, automations, right? That's kind of process that you need to be into the journey, but how to make sure that it had the clear responsibility and expectation, that's so important, right? When you do this exercise, you're going to have the bigger pictures that you're able to see which is the prioritization of the use case. I say to find the right moment. What's the right use case that make impactful? And then you look forward about what should be the 18 months that we should focus. And everyone in the organization have clarity to see where is my use case in more alignment and strategic way. And most importantly, it should not be the Bible. Every 6 months you should revisit it because it could be changed something, right? I think there's a kind of case study that I see that if you do in the scale enterprise-wide, you need that static view to bring everyone on board. Yeah, I'm sure Matt, you also have experience, right, from the value creation strategy. Maybe you can share a bit from your side.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, look, I think that's a great case study of how we helped an organization kind of come up with the whole strategy around data monetization. And yeah, maybe let me give some specific use cases that we use with 2 of our clients. So the first was in a deal situation, actually. One of our clients, a large real estate company, they were looking to acquire a chain of department stores in another Southeast Asian country, actually, outside of Thailand. And they wanted us to help them understand, how good was this business? So typically in a deal, you'll do a financial assessment and you'll assess the numbers and all of those kind of things. But what they really wanted to know is these stores we're acquiring, how good are they? Are there some that are actually really poor performing? Are there some that are very good performing? What's the value upside that we might be able to bring to this business if we buy it at a certain price? So in addition to all of the financial information and the market information, what we did here was we gathered geospatial data. So Dr. Kong has talked about that already in Thailand. This is in another country, but we gathered all of the location data, the maps data. So where were these stores in relation to points of interest? So maybe office centers or schools or universities, other shopping department stores. And then when it got really interesting was we captured cellular data. So we could actually see when people were going to these department stores, where were they coming from? Where were they going before they came? Where were they going afterwards? And how long were they spending at the department store? And that's the really important part, because the longer they spent at the department store, generally the more money they would spend, right? So we gathered all of that data and we benchmarked and analyzed based on the location of the department store, the number of people who live within a certain radius, and the number of people who are visiting. Are they performing above or below expectations? And what does that mean for our client in terms of how could they optimize and create more value in each of those department stores? So yeah, that's a very specific use case. They wanted to know, should they enter this market? How much should they pay? And what value could they create? So that was a deal situation. The other case study actually was a non-deal situation, a consumer goods manufacturer. They were looking to transform the business, to turn around and improve. And they asked us to look at the operations side. So more around the supply chain, the procurement, and more specifically, the inventory management. So they had thousands and thousands of products sitting in the stores, in the warehouse, in the factory, and they didn't really know. They knew they had a problem, too much inventory, too much stock, but they didn't really know how to fix it or where the problem was. So again, we downloaded all of the data, every single product, the last 3 years, how much have they been selling, how much have they been buying, how much is sitting in the warehouse and the stores. And we were able to analyze that and help them pinpoint, okay, this is where some of your problems are. We can see you've had these items, you've only sold maybe one a month, and you've got 10,000 sitting there. And we were able to understand what was the root cause of that.
Right.
And some of that was strategic. They hadn't thought about the strategy, the products. Some of that was operational. The person placing the order, there was no control or oversight of whether they order 100 or 1,000. So we used all of that data to then help them transform that process, that function, and release a significant amount of cash flow, actually. So that's a really good case where we use data, we put it into action, and actually they were able to release value. So two case studies from my side there.
Thanks, Matt. I think it's a reflect the other sector also utilize the data to do something or to make them values. I think nowadays people talking about the generative AI, right, a lot, right? ChatGPT, for example. And I know, Dr. Kong, your service, OCR, for example, also use of this, right, based on our technology advance. So maybe you can please share experience about the generative AI to create a new value and innovation to assist your client, maybe that you observe in the market.
Right. Actually, what my business did is we can extract information from variety of layout of the invoices, purchase order, or whatsoever. Extract information, and then we can understand it, and trying to mapping and validating and put into your ERP. The thing is, I think starting with phase first for the generative, you think, I think we have seen a lot of faces that look so real, but that's not real. Like I have the Matt's face and Kunton face, and then I can create another face that never seen in this world before, but looks like, hey, it should look like human. This is called generative AI. So the thing is, we take the real things up, we create a space, and then say, okay, people perceive the data this way. So we create another example that is in between, but it locked with the same people that perceive the data and understand it. The way to make on the invoice and purchase is the same. We get a lot of invoice, like millions invoice. So I have millions data points. So we create there should be some invoice that's meaningful ways, but doesn't fit into this 100 million one. Probably like this. That make us can guess and read another invoice that we never seen before. So we see probably this is the way to work on generative AI. You see, I can say that I can extract invoice probably is the one that I never seen before, but looks similar in the way that I have seen. So this is how to model the knowledge.
Right.
That part can use to help many things. First, in the business, when you ask people to operate your data, imagine you get a newcomer come in. You have to teach them. If you see this, you have to key in this. You have to check this. But this is intrinsic data. The way to do this one is we try to capture the knowledge and make it extrinsic and repeatable. For people, doesn't have to, at least people can learn it faster. and work with it, and you can start to doing it, and faster speed of the operation. But apart from that, if you see is a bigger space of the data, I said I can recreate invoices that I never seen before. That means I fill in the scarcity of the data. When come back to data, we talk about the broken data, incomplete data. Actually, generative AI can help you learning the overall and fill in, synthesize some new data to fill in, to make your adjustment, to make your assumption, to make your guide looks more solid. So you can see roughly the trend of the data. This is the thing that generative AI can help. So with this part, you can see that with this one, if you get the open data, you can model it with the generative AI. You can see the scarcity of data. You can see the structure of data. The generative AI can give you some creative, but the solid data can give you some knowledge. So this part can, nowadays with the data itself, and generative AI can help you move a little bit creative from what you have done. But for the open data itself, it can create a lot of value if we know how to get it. And if we found that it's broken, so we can fill it with some assumption. For example, I think everyone in the legal knows LexisNexis. They use the open data from the laws everywhere in the world, so you can search and check and do the least compliance with the data. Or in startups, we have called fiscal notes. Fiscal notes will learn the new bills from the government every day. They use AI bot to read all the bills, extract, analyze, summarization, and then create the risk assessment compliance to every client who wants to know the government risk assessment. So this is the way up there. And I think our fiscal notes, they see this many years ago and then buy another startup that's similar to fiscal note in EU. So now they expand in US and EU that to service this one. In Thailand, we have similar things. We call Corpus X from BOL. We have many financial reports of every companies in Thailand from the RDBD development, Department of Business Development. But this one, they use that data to create more value, to analyze, to understand, to do the risk, and update every day. So I think everyone knows the Corpus X or BOL. But in the world also have similar things. In UK, we have like open corporate data. It's similar to the Corpus X, but it's all over the world in this one. Imagine if you know this data and you can pinpoint to geospatial, how could you make a better strategy? Apart from that, we have this, it's called spend network. Spend network is the information of procurement data. Because the procurement data, budgeting data is open data from every country in the world. This one just take all the data in. And once if you know investment of any government in any country, you can make a better strategy in your global business. And you also can predict that what would happen in the next year because you have background data. This is probably the opposite of that's why when I was in the government agency, we opened also procurement data. So we hope that people can go there and use this to analyze and use this data, at least for transparency and trust. But furthermore, you can use prediction, help on your business planning, or analyze backward to your country. You can see, this procurement, how much from which department to which company as well, and who won award and for what purpose. And last year I used the OCR because many of budgeting is in paper. So we digitize this from the left-hand side into Excel. Imagine if you have every single projects of government in these Excels. How can you analyze these and create value from it? A lot of them, I would say. So this is opportunity of the capturing the data and open the data, which is also make transparency and trust. But data itself, if you said, like Kun Ton said, data itself maybe the value, if you use cost approach, you said, okay, this data is the cost that we created it. But if you use the value approach, it's much more than that because the figure inside that, the number of figures inside is, I think, like trillion baht. So if you can create any opportunity in that, just 1% is like 1 billion baht. So you can capture this data from that value from this data if you can digitize and work and open the government's data.
Thank you, ครับ Dr. Kong. I think if I take this from what you are sharing is generative AI at the beginning, it can bring another new value that we can cross the data and then create a new set of value, uplift the data itself to be see another perspective of the data. That now I think the technology allow us to do in an accelerated way already, see that. And also the project that you pick up from the real world example, it gives me a new perspective about look and use of data in another value, like the tax, for example, right? And you mentioned, I think clearly people think about corruption index, blah, blah, blah. But the way to look in that perspective about where should I see the opportunity of spending in which location, right? And then can help my business make decision informed. Right? That is a good example of the look at the data in terms of the value-driven way. So I think we come to the last section today for the Q&A session. Before we start, I'd like to let me check first about how many questions we have. So we try to pick up the few questions that we see the commonly asked first, and then if it's not able to answer all, we will send the video recording after post-event, okay? And I'd like to encourage before we go to the section about your feedback is very welcome to help us to improve our event in the future. And also we like and keen to know about your use case that you're currently working on, right? And what you see, how you're going to make data monetization that you learn from this section. So the first question that I see now here, you talk about, as you mentioned about challenges of the company in having the basic good governance structures to support the company to make the best out of the data. What would be the basic good organization structure from our experience? Let me take this question. Yeah. I would say, according to my point of view, I say this subject is to lead by the business. If you want to do in the strategy and why enterprise-wide value, I saw, but it have no one formula, I would say that, but at least the business-driven, it need to become first in terms of structure. I see the chief data officer or the head data report directly to the CIO or CEO, sometimes chief customer officer, sometimes chief finance officer. I can imagine that because they have business goal that really need to drive with the data, right? So, and then giving the right balance, because it's not only about the go to exploit the data. They also have other things underlying this, like security, compliance, right? All those governance. That's why another role is so important about the chief technology officer that need to interplay, but need to have them in the balanced way. And as I mentioned about the structures, it need to give a way that people feel engaged, and we can take the impactful use case from all the stakeholders and analyze the way to prioritize it. Because the data asset that create from one, it could be benefit for another. And that's so important. That organization structure and leadership buy-in is so important when you start data monetization projects. Yeah. So let me go to the next question. Maybe from you, from Matt. I think this one, we talk about the metrics thing. You mentioned a bit about the analysis without the produce much data inside, right? Spend so much time thing. So if you like to suggest when you come to about the insight or making insight, what is the metric that it matter the most?
Okay. Well, yeah, tricky question. I think obviously it depends on the use case, but I think the metric to me that matters the most is one that you can tangibly change, and that's going to lead to value. So let me try and give an example here. So maybe we talk about revenue. Revenue is a very important metric for many businesses, but it's often quite high-level metric, right? It's what you see in your monthly accounts or management accounts, etc. But let's maybe take a use case of pricing, right? So one use case for driving increased revenue might be the pricing of your products. So actually you want to drill down there and look at price per product or price per unit or price per customer. So again, depends on the use case. But that would be a metric that then you can benchmark and you can see, okay, if I increase that price per unit by 1 baht, what does that do to my value and what does that do to my revenue? So you're going back to that top line metric, but you're drilling it down to something operational that everyone can understand, and you know if I change that by 1 baht, it's going to make this difference. Whereas if you're looking at revenue, high level, yeah, revenue can grow by 10%, 5%. We often talk like this, but how do you do that? How do you make that happen? And you make that happen by looking at price per unit or sales per customer, something that's really operational. So yeah, that would be my guidance. Think of something that you can change and that is more at an operational level.
Thanks, Matt. Maybe I pick another question that talking about the challenge in the data quality, data maturity. Maybe this question for Dr. Kong นะครับ What's the level of maturity that should data have before beginning the data monetization process?
Okay, this is very many people ask this in governments. Yeah, I would say start now, don't wait. Because you cannot wait to get maturity, because sometimes even for a country you compete with other countries every day. From the company you compete with other companies every day. Start today, but doesn't have to start big. You can start small. Imagine, right, when you talk about the data, it's what you want to see roughly how it looks like in general and overview first. If I want to create triangle, you may need just only 3 points. You can create triangle. That means you only need 3 points of data. You create this space of triangle. Or you also can get a lot of points inside this triangle, also create this triangle. So you just have to wait until it creates density inside, right? Probably enough, good enough or not, is about, is it good enough for you to make decision? There's no really, I know there's no 100% in the world. Every decision make on the risk. Because you have time pressure, timeline, deadline, and many decisions. So I would say that doesn't have to wait for the maturity. You have to start now and think about use case first. Any opportunity, any question, and go back to, do we have this data? If not, which data that we can use and to replace it? And you can, because it's not about today data, it's our goal of business. It's about the goal of business that we need to break.
Right.
So we have to, in startup, we call it product market fit. If we think the data answering is a product, the market is value that we need to create. We have to make run of this. If we want to create this value, not with this type, we change the data, any data can create another thing to create the same value. This is the way how you work with data. Don't wait until, it's not like we have data and then we will go down, hackathon, and then we will get a good, no, it's not like that. So doesn't have to wait. But come to, if you measure, I would say that just come with, basically, try to make many data that is your main business in digital first. Try to make it in digital accessible and standardized first. And if you can standardize your main business, 80% or 50% of your business, like for me, I said, okay, you may not have to create a lot of data on your expenses.
Right.
If it doesn't related to your COGS, right? If your SG&A is good enough, you just create COGS first, main data structure to see manage your cost and your revenue first. That would be enough, because it's consume a lot of data to make sure that your unit price is cool. And then if you want to go operation, you go another way, so you can separate works, and it's about strategy that you do.
Yeah, I can see that have a strategic view. Important to prioritize, right? Yeah. Some small win, I think it needed to encourage it. Let people see the value of data when you consider about implementation. We have a time limit, only 1 minute left. Maybe I just quickly ask with a short answer. Yeah. What should be the call to action today Maybe start with you, Matt.
Sure, yeah. So quickly, I think two things. One, I would encourage everyone to look at their strategy and think about, is that strategy supported by data? Or have we just come up with a strategy that we think is the right one, but we don't know? We've got no data to support that and evidence. And then the second thing would be the more bottom-up, I think a little bit what Dr. Kong was saying. Look at what data you have. I bet there's a whole load of data that companies have that they're not using. So do that mapping, understand what data you have, and see what you can do with it. Yeah.
How about you, Dr. Kong?
I think we would say that data is not everything. Data is just information for you. People is the key to make decision from that data. So make sure that people who touch the data have literacy, good enough to make use of this data in the right way. So if you get data, but if your people doesn't have literacy to understand or use it, it's wasted.
Very good one. I think that is a kind of link to the data cultures and the capability that I think a lot of organizations still lack of to really understand about how to bring data in and interpret and use them to inform decision. For me, the last one, we talk about enterprise value, talk about your use cases. For me, finding the right use case, I think that's important, right? We have the limited resources, but spend time with the strategic thinking and find the right use case. That should be my call to action for today. So as we end of this Q&A session, so on behalf of KPMG Thailand, so we would like to thank Matt and Dr. Kong for their contribution to share insightful, and especially we appreciate about our audience participation today. So we hope to see you in the next future event, and hopefully you get a good insight and practical idea to help you moving forward and frame your winning data monetization strategy. So thank you and ขอบคุณครับ สวัสดีครับ